Hi, I'm Steve, and welcome to the Vicenta Talks podcast, where we talk to our community about navigating tech change and making forward-thinking choices. So in this episode of our podcast, we've invited Natalie along to talk about some of her experiences, particularly with other organisations and her organisation and the things that she does regarding AI. So Natalie, before we start, can we sort of just step back slightly and talk about yourself and what you're doing and the things that you're getting involved in and where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am the technology show host at Voice FM. So I'm coming into contact with technology people every week with my show, which is lovely. A real privilege to do that for Voice FM. I have a background in software development. So I've got a degree in computer science, although don't tell anyone. Because I don't code as much anymore, only if I'm allowed to. And so that was kind of my background. I worked for Procter & Gamble for 4 years, so big corporate. It's funny that sort of like, I assume people have heard of Procter & Gamble, but Unilever's the one in this country that's sort of more known, so they're a competitor of them.
Yeah.
And I worked in manufacturing, but IT for them. So I had a really kind of tough start in business in that, you get thrown straight into this corporate environment and suddenly, you're on the manufacturing line and you're head of innovation and you've been there like 2 weeks. And then they're like, oh no, now we need you to be head of infrastructure. Tesco's want this new building put in this new data center and you're managing it on your own, and you're like, okay then, I know what's infrastructure. So you imagine anyone that's had a corporate job will know exactly what that's like. While I was at uni, I was a consultant, so I worked for the equivalent of PwC, but a smaller company.
Yep.
So I was traveling around to Switzerland and doing work. I was in my early 20s, so I've done quite a lot of things like that.
Seen a lot of different technology.
And then I kind of found didn't really suit me being in a big corporate. I was living in Germany and doing lots of things like that, and I kind of felt a little bit incongruent with who I was and what I wanted and what the kind of corporate life asks of you. So I was 24, 25, and I said, right, I'm leaving. I'm going to become a teacher. I want to teach IT. Well, I want to teach maths, but they said, well, you've got so much IT experience. Go teach IT.
Yeah, cool.
And in that process, as I started to study, I met my now husband. So that was 20 years ago. And he said, I want to start a software company. And he's infrastructure. He worked for 3. He was like their lead architect.
Okay.
So when 3 first got the internet on mobile phones, they didn't know what to do with it. So they had to have all these secrecy signature things. And
wow.
And they were like, right, what do we do? They designed all these apps to use the internet. And then they got the first brick phones and with this tiny little screen. And they were like,
what do we do with that?
so all of these things got thrown out of the way. And they had I can't remember what they called it. I think it was Hot or Not. But it was the equivalent of they kind of swipe left, swipe right. And then they were like, well, the screen's like this big. So he was involved in all those kind of initial things. He wanted to leave as well. We met, we travelled, we came back with this idea for a software company. We wanted to be Accenture, but for really small businesses. So we ran 14 years. We were an SME startup specialist. So we've been involved in quite cool projects, but always in the background, and I guess very much like yourself, you're the organisation that keeps the business running, but they're not sticking your name on their front door because you're almost like their secret weapon. And I definitely felt for small businesses that's what we were. They'd obviously recommend you, but they didn't want any one of their competitors to know that you built this database, this software for them, because it gave them that competitive edge.
Yeah.
So that's my background. In 2019, I got sick, sold the company. And since then, I took a couple of years recovering, and then it was COVID. So everyone took a bit of time out then, and I started doing a lot of voluntary work. I worked with crafts, I worked with local people on some mental health stuff, just bringing communities together. Yep. A lot of sustainability work, so Repair Cafe and Clothes Swap. I kept just asking all the local kind of people for money, like the councillors and the parish councillors and stuff, saying, can we have some money? We need to do this. And generally they said yes. And if they didn't, I tried again.
Yeah.
Won lottery funding, started a craft group. I've now got 3 groups a week that run. Wow. This is a voluntary community committee that run that. So lots going on. But I got invited to do the technology show in 24. And I really loved it, and I started meeting people like yourself and people
Yeah,
who...
it was good fun. That was great.
It's just so much fun, and you only get an hour with each guest, but it gave me that view back into tech and what's happening, you know, with all of... I mean, AI has been around a long time, really.
Yeah.
But the explosion recently is the accessibility of it and how fast things are progressing and what it looks like now, and the fact that we're effectively beta testing it for people, right? We are unpaid users that are training these models on behalf of these big tech. That's very opinionated, but that's what
No, I think you're absolutely spot on.
And what that means is that these models are learning very, very fast, and they're learning from a broader spectrum of people than just your usual data modelers or your kind of tech engineers. So it is broader. It's not fully broad. I mean, I'd love to see a lot more diversity across the spectrum. You know, I've got a group of women who come to Thursday Craft Club who are in their 70s, retired. I don't think any of them has ever used an AI model. I might be wrong. And my dad's 78 and he does all the time. But that's mainly because he's trying to write songs or win the lottery. And so he's always asking AI how to do that. But he's wonderful. So he kind of sees something like that and goes, this is cool. I wonder what I can do. And he'll have a play and he's not afraid.
Yeah.
But I
think that's part of it, isn't it? Is those you're either afraid of it or you're not afraid of it. I think that is definitely one thing that I think we want to try and get to.
And the other one, I mean, I studied stand-up for a while, and now I do improv, which is a brilliant thing to do, actually. Okay. No, don't worry, I'm not going to rope you into it. But one of the jokes I did, which is real story, on my stand-up was about my husband's grandfather, who unfortunately died when he was 93 a few years ago. Lovely guy. And he was a professor for university, maths professor, wonderful, really, really smart. And he rang up in a panic, because obviously we had a tech company, and he knew that we knew what we were doing. And he said, I think the police are coming. And we said, well, what do you mean? And he said, well, my computer's done an illegal operation.
I love that. That's pretty good.
Oh, it was funny.
Yeah, I can see you're going to get a good laugh on the stand-up with that.
He was genuinely really frightened.
Yeah.
And you think, actually, when you meet the people, you're working with the people in the community who, you know, they said to me, I need to now get an appointment with my doctor, and they're saying I've got to use an APP. What's an APP?
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, well, what phone have you got? And they hand you something, and you're like, okay, so can you get your son to buy you a phone that has an internet on it? Or they give you something that is a smartphone, but they literally just know how to use text messages. And then this thing comes up called WhatsApp, and they don't know how do I get onto that? And so you're coaching.
What does it mean? And how dangerous is it? And I've heard lots of bad things about it.
Genuine fear, you know, I don't want someone breaking into my house. I don't want someone, you know, reading my emails, seeing my photos, and you know, I won't do anything on my phone just in case. And these are real fears, and they're not unfounded. You know, you work in cybersecurity, and these social media scams, and you know, it used to be people ring up, you have to do window glazing scams, you know, and people.
Well, it was a knock on the door. You got it still happens. You got some tiles on your roof, but it escalates all. It escalates all the way there.
But now you've got tech involved.
Oh, absolutely.
The speed that they can do these scams at, especially using AI. One of the guys I interviewed a few weeks ago, he was talking about how the hackers are using AI.
Oh, absolutely.
To speed up and actually beat a lot of
the whole. And I just wrote a blog a couple of just the other day about this. In terms of the speed that they want you to try and react is part of the scam. So that it's an immediate, oh my God, something's happened. You need to do this now. You need to click on this link, and most people are doing it, as you quite rightly say, on the phone rather than quietly with a gin and tonic in the hand with their computer. And so therefore they go, oh God, crikey, I better do that. They click that link and hey presto, they're away with it.
But they're using marketing techniques, they're using sales techniques to get that urgency.
Absolutely right. So we've been talking about tech in general there and some of the things. AI puts another layer on top of that. And one of the things we were talking about before we started rolling was the fact that the way I see it, and I think you suggested to me that you've had lots of conversations with people as well, is that this dichotomy of people there are people that really are starting to get invested and understand, and there are people that are on the periphery of what AI is and what it can do, maybe nervous, recognise that they probably want to do something, but actually sort of almost don't know what the first or the next step is.
Start.
So sort of do they do they jump in and then find out they're giving all their information away, or they jump in and actually find that they've wasted an awful lot of time? Well, it's just, I think at the beginning there, you jump in and actually ask a load of questions and think, well, actually, what's the point of this? It gave me a pretty stock answer. And actually, it's how do you begin that journey to make AI something that may well be useful to you, first of all, to you as an individual, but actually then in terms of from a business perspective. Talk to me about the people that you've met and the people you've interviewed and stuff like that.
Can I answer the question? My opinion
Sure.
will then come back to the system itself. So what came up for me when you said that is like, it's problem definition. So if you say, I have got a problem, I need a new conservatory, I've got this issue on my computer, I want to fix it. In order to get a good solution, you need to define the problem properly, right? And this is coming from a software designer. And so if you were going, right, my resources, I'm going to go to the library, I'm going to go to the hardware store, I'm going to go to the internet, I'm going to use AI. If you go in there with an unclear problem definition, how are you going to know that you've got your answer?
You don't. And let me just dive in there. Is
that too theoretical for you?
No, I'll tell you what, that really opens an interesting segue up, because what you said there was, okay, you've got to know what to ask it.
Yeah.
Then what you did is you talked about the reference points that you might use. You went, I'll go to a library. I'll do that. Okay. Now, you go to a library and you pick up a Encyclopedia Britannica that everybody's got. The data in it's probably going to be pretty well defined and has been pretty well trodden and may well be used. A How Do You Do book or something.
And it's probably been validated.
Published, validated. You can see, whether 5 copies have ever been sold or 78 million copies have ever been sold.
Yeah.
AI, I could tell AI a load of junk. I could feed that into that large language model, and AI is not going to, until such times as it has enough information to validate whether that's junk or not, is going to serve you as part of that. Where do I get my information? It's going to serve you back that junk.
Yeah, well, you've heard
which
about
is one of those problems.
The glue on pizza, right?
Yeah.
You know, because Reddit is, Google started doing this last year, but they started favouring user-generated forum content over websites, business websites, and in their algorithm. So actually completely threw some businesses under the bus and completely changed the way that they gave credence or ranking to these types of websites. But of course, some people on these forums have sense of humour. So the pizza example, if you haven't heard of it, look up. But basically they were like, well, how do I get cheese to stick to a pizza? And people started going, well, use super glue. And of course, everyone's jumping on the bandwagon and giving them answers. And so this was literally a response that AI was giving to a student, and that came out in the media recently. But this won't be an isolated incident. This is happening. And I don't know about you, but I use ChatGPT quite a lot. In fact, I use Gemini in the car, I use ChatGPT, and I am in the middle of writing a framework with the help of AI, and I'm being fully, open about this. It's to do with network. It's ironically to do with non-tech stuff. So it's actually how to network in person, rather than anything technical. But I'm using it to flesh out ideas, to brainstorm.
Why not?
But I'm finding it's really sycophantic. It's really like, that's a brilliant idea, Natalie. Oh yes, it's really down your street. You're so good at this, and I'm kind of getting a bit.
Wow.
I'm being really open. I'm like, yeah, can we just get to the point, please?
No, absolutely.
Has anyone else done this? And I answered the question of the day. How many other people, because it gave me an answer to something that I was looking at doing, and it said about holding space and all these different things. And it was so similar to something I'd received from someone else I know, slightly different business model, but the wording, the language, the kind of touch points, it was almost identical to what was coming back for me. I said, all right, how many people are asking you these questions right now? And how many people are you giving similar answers to? Oh, well, I can't divulge other users. I don't have awareness of anybody else's data except yours. I only know that you exist in the world.
Oh, my Lord.
And yes. Right, okay. but this is the thing,
It is.
Exactly what you said. If although you've got the bad data in, will be bad data out. And you're aggregating that, and you're accelerating that terribleness, the lack of integrity, the data, the whole internet's probably been indexed 3 times over. how much have you read on the internet that's absolute nonsense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because anyone can put any website about anything. You know, you've got people's opinions that not everyone agrees with. Some people agree with, have different opinions. Yeah. You've got things in different languages. You've got different perspectives. You've got joke websites. They're all being indexed with the same criteria and the same kind of scoring system as something like, well, I don't fully trust the BBC. but, you know, institutions have a bias. Yeah. There's institutional bias and there's also unconscious bias. So everything has a bias, everything has an agenda. Yep. And all of that has kind of been gathered, put together, and it all has the same weight.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of go, oh, yeah, well, this is what we've got.
We'll serve that to you.
Yes, yeah, so you can understand why people are frightened.
No, it is, absolutely. And, you know, my experience of it, and I'm using, so I've used ChatGPT, but use Copilot quite a lot with the Microsoft stack that we have here at Vicenza.
Yeah, because you get them at 365, don't you, as well?
And it's done some, you know, amazing things. Some things where I've actually sat back and gone, blimey, that's pretty crazy. On the data that I've got, and we also want to talk about data lakes and stuff like that, just a little bit, so that people get a bit of an understanding of where that sort of sits.
You're creating a scope for that data. You talk about data lakes. So you've basically created, stabilised, protected the data that you're giving it. You know that data is decent and has good integrity and all the rest of it. And so it's actually valid, makes sense, and it's within that boundary.
Yeah. And the one thing that I'm doing there is I'm giving it. So this is really weird. So I suppose you could call this the training element of how you're doing this. I'm giving it something to do. So, for example, I might give it a forecast model for something. For, you know, how's Vicenza going to increase its revenue by blah, using whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. And as long as there's enough data for it to understand what the trajectory has been and the ideas of where we think it might go, then it has served me back something which was a really sort of wow moment. You sort of go, wow, that's really concise, it's really on point, and I think I can use it. And then what I've then done is I've then manually gone and done it myself and gone, okay, let's see where that is, and come back and gone, well, okay, those two things pretty much line up. Now let me ask it a more difficult question with the same data, so that improving it. So use the stuff you've done, but now extract this out of it. And then it comes back and it gives you something else. It gives you another opportunity to refine that a bit further and say, okay, so was that right? Was it lying? Did it pick everything I wanted?
That's the way we're relying on context models and memory and stuff.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it's at that point instead of going, well, it was really good, and I can use that phrase every time, where I can ask it to do that. This is the point where you start building up agents. So you go, actually, I don't want to do that anymore. I'm going to ask you to do that every Thursday at 2:00. I want you, Mr. Agent, to do that for me and serve me up that, because I know that contextually you're going to go find the right data and use the right data and do that sort of thing. So that's really important. And you're right. The boundary there is that we've created the boundaries of information that we want to work with, and we also keep that information within our boundary. Because I think the other thing that is a bit of a problem is that people they go out there into the large language model
for free, and then they just away their data.
Yeah, and their data's out there. And do you know what? Just recently, we had a customer that we were giving some training for, and they had jumped in and started using ChatGPT. It's sort of on the road. Oh yeah, we've been doing that, and we sort of said, okay, well, what are you using it for? And they said, well, we use it for specific jobs where we are, for example, we're consolidating notes from confidential meetings with suppliers and things like that.
So we went,
and hang on a minute, and you're using ChatGPT to do that? And they went, yeah. And it was like, okay, you know that stuff's out there. And they went, no, I don't think it is there, because this is confidential stuff. And we ran a little test afterwards.
And you got some.
We served them back like 5 or 6 full meeting notes from meetings that they had.
And were they doing that with like a paid So, because I know that
Yeah.
ChatGPT says that it has different levels of security
Yeah.
depending on whether you pay or whether you don't pay. But of course, if you're putting it into the point of a large
But you're
language
responsible
model,
you're responsible for the security. ChatGPT isn't.
Yeah,
so in other words, if you don't know what.
but you
how far to go.
can, like you say, if you make an agent, then you can ring fence, and a lot of people are putting their own. I mean, as a sort of infrastructure,
Small language model.
Yeah,
Small language
but
model.
you don't get the benefit of the big data set, or you've got a lot of work to put a big data set into a small language model.
Yeah, well, what
and
you
this
then
is
do
very
is
specific.
you then go ask the large language model questions, which doesn't expose your data or perhaps your IP. Yeah.
But it's people like you who understand the structure of that. You know, the guy that was too early about someone coming to look at the conservatory today, and this week I've had several people, and I've been asking them, well, how you get on with AI? What about this and what about that? You know, if you say to somebody like that who's got maybe an office, maybe the guy that I spoke to didn't have a receptionist anymore, she's retired, and he was basically not taking appointments. He was having missed phone calls, and when he got back after working all day, he was phoning the customers in the hope that it hadn't gone to somebody else, just by the fact that he had these missed calls. I said, why don't you use an AI receptionist or an AI chat on the website that can answer questions and then book, you know, even just use automation, something like Tidycal, Calendary, that can book those things in for you. And he sort of looked at me, and I've had 3 hits. And he said, oh yeah, that sounds really expensive. And I was like, well, Tidycal costs 40 quid. That's it. It's not even an annual or monthly fee. Calendary is a monthly fee. I said, but that's automation, it's not AI. And there's a difference. But then, as you say...
No, you're absolutely...
But they don't necessarily need that. And I think people are talking about automation, they're talking about AI, and obviously real AI, you know, like iRobot and movies like that are talking about them taking... We're not there yet.
No.
But people are kind of putting all of these technologies into one big bubble and going, oh, it's all AI.
And they are going to have to spend some money on it, by the way. And
yes,
that's just,
of course.
What's interesting, he said, oh, well, 40 quid's a lot. Now, okay, apologies to builders. I had some builders last year doing lots of building work in my house, and they turned up in the morning and they had definitely been to Greg's, and they definitely had a coffee in their hand. And I think if you do that every day for a week, you've probably spent 40 quid.
So I didn't tell him how much it would cost. But what I'm saying is that impression is like, that's not for me, it's going to be too expensive. So the big companies that are doing, and actually where I'm seeing in the SMEs and the freelance communities that I'm in, for freelancers that are picking up and researching and running and trying safely these models, they're the ones where their marketing online has just suddenly stepped up. You know, they're posting more often, their brand looks great, you know, they're actually kind of accelerating what they're doing.
Yeah.
You know, I was going to ask you, when you did that interrogation of your data and you got that model, the projection. If you had brought in a CFO or whatever, or a financial accountant to come and do that, it would have cost you time and taken money. So you could have done it yourself, but taken time, which you haven't got. So how quickly did you manage to get AI to do that with all the prompt engineering?
So I mean, that was probably. So remember, I'm experimenting here, yeah. As we all are, as we are. But that was like a 2-day experiment. Mm-hmm. With some really powerful results at the end. And I think the key there was it's like 2 days elapsed time, so it wasn't, you know, 10 o'clock. Because actually what I think what was important, and I think it's also important to sort of note here, is that have that concept and go get it to do something, and don't jump straight back in with another question for AI, but think about how it got to what its question, how did it answer your question? Because it actually, I think, forms a better understanding of what you're then going to ask the next question. Because I don't know if you, Natalie, but I certainly have been in a situation where I've asked an AI tool to do something and actually then typed in, but you know that's not right. And it's come back going, no, it is right. And then you've challenged it 2 or 3 times, and you get to the end of it, and you've pointed out the error.
Oh yeah.
And then it turns around and says, "Sorry, Steve, you're right.
Yes.
I'll learn next time."
Yeah.
And that's a real wow moment at that point when it's done that.
Yeah, well, I was doing...
but it's lied. It's lied 3 times. It's tried to defend its faith 3 times before it's actually gone, no, you are right.
Yeah, no, it does assume that it is right first. I did it, so really sort of simple example, I do bag design and make bags as a hobby. Yep. And I was doing, I wanted it to sketch me something I had in my mind for a tote. And I just couldn't be bothered to get my pen and paper out. So I was like, okay, this is what I want. Just tell me what the dimensions of the flat pattern pieces are. Just sort of thought, I'll see if you can do it. Save me some time. And it came back and it had the dimensions right. But as soon as it 3D'd it forgot about boxing the corners. And so it was like, oh, so the box bottom's going to be like this. And so your sides are going to be like that. And I said, no, you're wrong. Because if the sides are 16 inches, what about going around the corners? Because you haven't gone for a gusset pattern, you've gone for a box, because it said box corners. So, well, you know about box corners, so obviously you're reading the right material. And I literally had to tell it, like you said, it's almost like 3 times, right? 3 times your maths is wrong. Think about that again. And it wasn't until I prompted explicitly why the model was wrong.
Exactly, you have to tell it.
And it goes,
wrong.
Yeah, yes, of
that's
course.
the learning it's doing back, because it's gone. Oh,
but what I haven't done is gone back and done that experiment again from fresh on a new thread and said,
see whether it's,
could you do that again and see if it still makes the mistake. But if you don't know what you're looking at, that's what I come back to the beginning of, like, understand the problem definition and how you're going to validate the answer. Yeah. And so we always did in software, because you example of the finance, you could have paid someone to come do that manually, or you could have spent longer doing it manually. But then you want to repeat it every month to get information.
And there it is.
What you would have done years ago is you would have come to someone like me and said, Nat, can you automate me or program me the logic that I followed with a piece of paper and a pen, make that into code so it can be repeated from a database. And that's what we used to, simplified version of what we used to do.
Yep.
But in 5 years' time, you're not going to need people like me coding, but you might still need people like me who understand the logic and what needs to happen to program the agents or whatever people are using.
To check the agents.
And to validate what you're getting.
Because what you end up doing is having lots of agents which is giving you information, and then almost, let's call it, for want of a better word, a super agent that is, now go get the information from those 6 agents and do this with it. And that I think is, and if you then push that a little bit further forward and go, okay, so in this realm of automation, you may want to take, let's just take Vicenza for a second. I might want to take feeds in terms of the documentation and journeys that we have agreed and are delivering with our customers, against the tickets that are coming in from the service desk, against innovation that we're hearing from the tooling that our customers have got and how it can be adapted. I may want agents that are pulling information in about that on a real-time basis, which then I have something ahead of that which says, I now want you to report for customer X. You know what they've got. You've got these feeds from these other agents. Develop me something which gives me intelligence for me to be able to talk to that customer about where things are going in the short, medium, long term. And actually also, and by the way, this is how you are currently using that tooling, because we've got this real-time telemetry from what you're doing, yeah? And things like cybersecurity can fit into that as well, and stuff like that. So you can be really
more
really
proactive
innovative.
and offering another level service to your clients. So one of the things that we used to do internally, we were quite a lean machine in terms of our recruitment, is where we had a help desk alongside the software development, because when you've got the software, then you have to support it.
Yeah.
Is that we would analyse the tickets that came in and the ones that that took a long time to resolve or caused a lot of back and forth, and where they were communication errors, and then we would kind of optimise for that. So we would go, right, we've got too many of password issues. So and that was before you had the password reminder function. So we were like, right, on these softwares, we need to kind of put a password reminder function, and then we put in like multi-factor authentication earlier on in those softwares than we would have done to kind of resolve kind of what I felt was like pointless wasting time between both the customer and our staff. And so we would do that. We'd look at these patterns and go, how do we code this out? Whether it's something we do for a client, they say, oh, we've got loads of people, recruitment company, everyone's ringing up asking these questions, get them on your FAQs. Even better, when you send your intro email out, 5 bullet points, have you done this, this and this, checklist, so that you're being so proactive with it.
Yeah.
And then you can use that as a filter. If someone then replies and they haven't done those things, so it's like, you're clearly not going to be suitable for this role. So, you're not going to, so it's kind of saying, what's happening in real life, how do I take that information, that data, and make the information that's useful? But what I would say is I think people are going to get to a point of data overwhelm or information overwhelm, and that you can automate all these things, you get all these agents and your super agent. But some of them are amazing people that I follow that are really good business coaches, sort of like exec coaches. They will be asked to go in for a whole day or for a whole week, and they'll go and speak to the board, and they'll be asked for these huge pages and pages of report, because they get paid a lot of money to do this.
Yeah.
But the most successful ones say, no, I'm going to give you 2, maybe just 1 action. Because if I give you a single action, and some people, oh no, I want more than 1 action, you'll actually do it.
Absolutely.
Whereas if I give you a 20-page report, all of these different recommendations, I come back in 6 months' time, the chances are you've done maybe half.
Yeah, or even that, yeah.
And then what's the point of spending all that money and bringing all those executives together, all of that time and all that information to make no changes?
Yeah, and also those 20 changes, it's great you say that, because we've done some of that ourselves here, is that, those 20 changes, they're not isolated. So if you do 3 and you're not going to get any benefit, or if you miss 3.
Depending on what they are. But also,
cybersecurity is a great example of that.
Is
that people, they go, well, I've got a file and I've got this and I've got this and but they've missed 2 things, and you go, well, okay, well, there's this great big hole here. Yeah, it's great. You're spending money and it feels like you're doing the right thing, but can't you see this great big black hole here?
But that's exactly what you're saying. That you've got. Cybersecurity is a bit like having a bucket, right? And you're carrying your information around in a bucket. Your sort of secrets, and someone's poked holes in the bucket, right? Or someone's come along and throwing stones and making holes. In order to kind of be completely secure, you need to make sure every single hole is patched.
Absolutely.
And maybe reinforced. And you've got someone like yourself who's external, who is kind of, your only job is to check it for their safety. You don't have any other gender other than you want them to be safe. So it's a terrible analogy, but that's how I would see it. So if you just plug 3 of those holes, you're still leaking, you're maybe leaking water slower, but you're still leaking.
You're leaking it. And we've used that analogy, but you talked about data again, and we've talked about data almost consistently through this episode.
Because data's all that we have.
It's the new oil. It's everything. As you say, you talked about information overload, but it's a case of that data becomes either unuseful information or useful information. And I think, again, this is where AI may well be able to, if it's focused in the right channel, will give you the information that's useful for you to make decisions at that point. There comes a point, as you say, where AI makes the decisions for us, but Skynet hasn't become active at this point. It hasn't become active at this point.
But it can give a second pair of eyes, and I think sometimes you can be running a business, and it certainly happened with me. You're so close to it that you can't really see the wood for the trees because you're in the business. You're doing the accounts, you're doing everything is right there with you, and actually someone else coming in as that's what, for me as a business mentor, I've often come in and go, what about that? Oh, I didn't even see that. And you're like, we'll deal with that now because that's going to become a problem. And so AI could do that. It could be helpful in that kind of way, but not if the data you're giving it is flawed.
So in that sort of business mentoring journey that you go on and that you do, what's the appetite that you hear from those execs?
For mentoring or for AI?
For AI.
So everybody wants to have some kind of plan. Everybody wants to feel like board level are pushing for, stakeholders are saying, what's our AI strategy? It's definitely become, the new chocolate in the room, if you want to call it that. It seems that if it's not on your agenda, if you're not discussing it, you're missing out. People are worried about competitors taking over, and I think they're right to do that.
Yeah.
But there is also this concern about people wasting time. If people are... there's obviously a privacy concern and giving away, confidential information, and people are being sort of careful, but individual employees might not be. So it's having that educational piece around your whole team, saying what is it okay to do, what's it not okay to do.
So it's almost like a policy, an AI policy.
Really important to have.
This is governance and compliance in a big C and a big G, really.
Absolutely. So compliance, making sure that you're doing things right, and then governance, that you're doing the right things. So it's really important that you're kind of all following the same principles. And if you want your employees to experiment, let them experiment, but tell them how to do that safely. And so they're not putting your data and your reputation on the line. I think that's really, really important. But like the individual, the smaller companies are using it to create images, to create marketing, to interrogate, to research for them, or help them write articles, help them write posts, help them with visibility. And I think that's all completely fine. But there's a very smart guy, and I'm not going to name him, who works in Barclays Lag for one of the companies there. And he came to me last year and he said, agents is the new pot of gold. And he was doing AWS's beta. So to be an AWS partner, you get into their program. And he was doing all the training into all the agents for infrastructure. So basically, rather than having to have an infrastructure person that runs all of your servers and all of your applications online, these agents are doing like you were talking about, very specific jobs. So they're running all of that for them. And my husband, with his work with infrastructure, he actually writes infrastructure as code now. So where he's helping companies, it's coded in, and when you deploy it basically and it's self-documenting, right?
Yeah.
But then you take that to the next level and you have agents doing these things. So you have like your status monitoring and all these different things happening. And as long as these agents are very task specific and there's another agent checking that they're running in the same way that you have monitoring and all these things. Yeah. And it's designed, but it still has that human touch and that human sort of checking. Yeah. That's the people who are in that world. They're the ones that are going to leapfrog into the next level. If we're still kind of thinking AI is like, oh, I've got a chatbot and I'm asking questions, like I say, you're getting similar homogenized information. All of our marketing, all of our kind of like things are going to start to look the same, and it's all going to kind of converge. If you want to be efficient, agents and very specific, well-designed agents is what's going to make a big difference.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people right now, they're doing the former that you just talked about. So they're playing with chatbots, they're playing with those things in a way that they're not. From what I see when I talk to people who are on the journey, but still very early doors in that journey, is that they haven't quite made the leap between the chatbot idea and how it does it, and how you then, as you've just quite rightly said, create the agents and create the automation that then really starts to build the value for a small business. So the thing I think that's really important here is if you grasp it in the right way, it doesn't matter how big or small a business you are, you will see benefit. You will either have an advantage over your competitors. You will definitely be able to do certain things quicker. You'll be able to do things more reliably. Mm-hmm.
But I think there is a lot more training out there now. Like the New Forest Business Partnership have got an AI course on the 3rd of February, I think, where they're talking about 7 things that businesses can do right now.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
AI. That's being run by them, and all the networks that I'm in, I'm starting to see these bubbling through. Something that I'm working with a colleague on at the moment about how do we bring that training to a small to medium business, and not a kind of like, hey, this is AI, this is how it works, but actually like right now in this room, if you've got your laptop, we can set you up a reception agent, or we can set you up this, or we can give you this Calendly option type thing, or we can kind of resolve this specific business problem, or create this automatic report, dashboard, whatever, using these tools. Yeah,
because people want, because I think that's a really great idea, because people are starting to invest in it. What they want is they almost want a proof point, don't they? What you've done there with a Calendly thing, with a reception agent, is you're saying, okay, so look, I'm going to use AI to create this reception agent, and then you can go away and it will just do it, and then you'll go, wow, that's interesting, and that then spurs you on to go, okay, so I sort of get why that's doing that. What else can I do? Rather than the like, whoa, okay, this is sort of look a bit hocus pocus, and people say that I can do it, but I'm not quite sure how to join the dots up.
Yeah, and it's about having that curiosity mindset. Sort of curiosity with safety, basically, is where you want to be. Yeah. And listening, asking people for help, because a lot of us are still experimenting, and it's changing. You know, what's available next week is not what's available this week. So it's a really fast-moving environment. You've got to kind of have that curiosity. But then if you think about equality, right? there are loads of businesses that we probably deal with day in, day out, like your sort of plumbers and your corner shop, where maybe they don't even have a website. You know, that they're not even on, some businesses that I find that aren't even on Google Maps, and they're location based, and you think, you just go on there and type it in, and then they send you a postcard, and you have to verify the address. And I'm like, these are not very technical, complicated things, but to some people, they just have opted out of that.
Yes.
And I think for me, the fear is that when you've got this really fast-moving animal that feels like really scary and kind of magic, that are we just going to create this huge difference between businesses, even more than there is right now, that this sort of like tech literacy that we have here against sort of non-tech literacy, that's kind of, I'm choosing not to be involved at all, it's just going to accelerate that difference, and we're going to lose some traditional businesses because they're not able to do it.
No, I think you're right.
However, I think there is a solution, because I don't think you're going to turn someone who doesn't want to get a computer and doesn't want to do that into a tech-savvy wizard. I don't think that's going to where they want to be. But I think what you might end up is agencies, a bit like a marketing agency, that are kind of like digital agencies, business support, that do all of those things, that kind of run the business on behalf of those businesses. So they almost have, like, you should get your fractional CFOs and your CTOs. But you have someone who's like, I will deal with inquiries and book
fractional AI.
Yeah, fractional AI. And Carl, one of my favourite developers when I had our company, he's actually famous in the industry. He's Dutch, and he was so we were using Java Server Faces, and he's the guy that wrote it and wrote Omnifaces and stuff. I don't know if you use Java.
Yeah, no,
when we were getting into bigger customers in London, I said to my husband, "Who's the best coder? Who are the best coders in this language?" And he said, "Well, it's Balco. You know, he's one that answers all the questions on the forum." And I said, "Well, I want him." That was like, pull the other one. And I said, right. So then a week later, I said, right, I've booked a flight to Amsterdam. Do you want to come with me or not? And he was just like, "You've done what?" And I was like, well, we want to pitch for this big project. It's a lot of money. It's really important. I've got to move really, really fast. You said he's the best one. I'm going to go get him. And so I went to Amsterdam. We recruited him as a contractor, and he came with 2 people. An amazing, incredible developer. He's literally this week just released a new technology called Omni AI.
Wow.
And it is API for AIs, because he said you're kind of caught into all of the different sort of tech stacks, all of the different vendors with the AIs.
Totally,
so he has now created this brand that is hot off the press, and he's just built this thing called Omni AI.
Give me your perspective of how that's going to change the landscape for people.
Individuals.
Yeah.
I mean, there are some individuals that are using AI and are curious about it, same as businesses, really. I think that there's a lot of young people that I know who are frightened of not having jobs in the next
loss
decade.
of jobs and
like trying to get into industries and working in pubs and stuff, and saying things to me like, well, now AI is here. It was just, I was really worried about getting a job when I graduated. Now I'm definitely not going to get one. What do you think? So when you're in this sort of position of, this tech show, people come to you and ask you for your opinion.
Yeah. And
I said, yeah. And that has been the case throughout history, that a big change like this, machinery came into the sort of sewing industry and after, the Industrial Revolution. This is the next kind of third industrial revolution, they're saying. And we are going to have to change as a society. I would love to see basic minimum income come in, or whatever it's called. The Green Party had it on their manifesto, which is where everybody is paid above the poverty line for just existing in the community, and then you choose how you spend your time, and you can work and volunteer.
Make AI generate that wealth to give people the opportunity. Yeah,
and also there's talk at Davos at the moment about the fact that GDP for countries doesn't take into account a lot of unpaid work. So they've now started talking about the AI work that will be unpaid in a different way. But also there's a lot of carers, a lot of unpaid work in people who are caring for adults, people who are caring for children, people who are kind of making the sandwiches for people who are going to work. All of this kind of stuff, the kind of country works and produces based on this work that is unpaid, and it's not counted in GDP. So that's I think it's a really, it's not a feminist point, but it's a really interesting point that the way we measure our success isn't fully kind of fleshed out. And so he was saying, we must take into account the impact that AI is going to have. There's all these other kind of sort of socioeconomical issues that are happening already. And I think that if we kind of sort out the environment and we raise everyone above the poverty level, and we say that everyone can eat, everyone can dress themselves, everyone can do what they want and stay healthy, things will work themselves out. Because when people are in scarcity mentality, where they don't have enough food, they don't have a roof over their head, then the behaviours that we see psychologically is kind of, you're more likely to smoke, you're more likely to eat badly, you're more likely to commit crime. Not because you've come from a poor background, but because you're in scarcity mentality, and it happens to anybody at whatever background they are when they're in that moment. And I think if we can eliminate that through the way the society and the government and the country deals with humans, with people, and how we manage people, then we create this space for creativity. We create this space for people to kind of give back, and then your productivity improves. And actually, a lot of us need to slow down. A lot of us are just doing too much. Yeah. And then you have health issues, and then you have unhappiness and other kind of knock-on effects. So I think we have an opportunity for AI to actually make us better.
Yeah, be a force of good.
Because
there is a
because
force of
we
good
are,
that could
we are
be.
at the moment we are running full speed into a brick wall of problems, but we don't have to see it like that. I think we can. But this is an amazing opportunity to use technology to create wealth, like you said, to realign all these things, and to kind of bring us all up to a level where we can do what we want alongside what the computers can do, and just build a better society. And it sounds really kind of like idealistic, but we have that choice.
Yeah, it's a good hook to hang on to and go, look, if there's where we're trying to get to, if we get even somewhere close to it, then actually we've probably succeeded. We probably have the world's a better place, and it's saved.
I mean, I don't know what sport you play, whether you're a golfer or a sailor or whatever, but for me, I love rock climbing and tennis. So if I can spend 3 days a week doing that and 2 days a week working, why would I not choose that?
Totally.
So what? And I think most people would say in balance, as long as they had the things to supply their family and their lifestyle that they wanted.
Absolutely.
And the world would be a better place. So
mine's mountain bikes and fast motorcycles. So that's where that
you
one goes.
You can keep those.
Oops.
I'm about to give my bike away.
Yeah. Not endorse it, by the way, Susan. Talk to me a little bit about projects you're doing at the moment. What are you up to right now?
Oh, doing lots of things. So obviously got the radio show, which is great. I make handbags, which is kind of a non-technical thing, but it's actually very, it's about design, and it's software in a kind of way. So I make bespoke bags. I make one a month to order. So travel bags and, leather bags and whatever anyone wants. So I'm kind of about 3 months ahead at the moment. So I'm booking, I think April or May's bag at the moment. So people come to me and say, no, I want
a bag to do this.
With these pockets and this size and this colour and this type of fabric. And so that's a kind of side hobby that I do. I'm working with an ex-client of mine who is lovely. He's a business coach. He grew a multi-million-pound company, and we are going to be mentoring and coaching businesses. So growth businesses. How do they grow, but from a really compassionate point of view, from a kind of like not go mad, but how do you kind of stay sane? How do you bring your team along? How do you kind of... So I've got the tech specialist background, and his background is sales and marketing business and growing business. So, we're both more gentle than your kind of average, right, I'm going to 10x you and all those. We're kind of trying to kind of create an antidote to that, where we're bringing businesses together in strategy meetings, but we're going to start softly. We're going to start with some online and then some in kind of face-to-face workshops that are just half an hour to an hour to do practical strategy work. And we're building up to kind of like a peer-to-peer, private, confidential boardroom strategy half-day meets. So that's going to be happening over the year. And they're the main kind of things. And also I teach for Itchen College as well. So I've got a few different hats, a few different voluntary things.
So busy.
Yeah, so people tell me.
Absolutely. Well, listen, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
Having you on the podcast. And it's been just a great conversation through, your view of where AI is and where business is and some other things as well. So
I mean, it's only my opinion. I'm not speak for any of the big companies.
I think it's important, and this is what this podcast is all about, is sort of showcasing other people's ideas and views in terms of something that has a bit of a tech influence in some way. So thanks again for your time.
You're welcome, Brenna. I will tell you more next time about my other idea.
Can't wait.
Thanks for tuning in to the Vicenza Talks podcast. If you've enjoyed the discussion, hit subscribe for more conversation with our community on cybersecurity, AI strategy, and future-focused business thinking. And if you've got questions or want to continue the chat, comment below or email me at sales@vicenza.com.